The earth trembles. The world shook. It began as murmurs in the earth, subtle quakes that rattled dishes in quiet kitchens and sent ripples through lakes. At first, scientists dismissed them as normal tectonic shifts. But then the tremors grew. Violent, relentless, spreading across continents. Cities cracked. Bridges buckled. Entire blocks sank as the ground yawned open. Metropolis was among the first to feel it. Clark Kent sat at his desk in the Daily Planet, typing up an editorial about food insecurity, when the floor jolted violently. Coffee spilled, typewriters crashed to the ground, and Perry White barked orders as the newsroom erupted into chaos. Lois Lane grabbed her bag, eyes sharp with instinct. "Clark, this isn't an earthquake. It's everywhere," she said, pointing to the monitors flashing red with global alerts. Tokyo, Cairo, Sao Paulo, Johannesburg. The tremors were universal. Clark's eyes narrowed. He excused himself, vanished into the stairwell, and seconds later Superman erupted into the sky. From above the planet, the sight chilled even him. Fissures spidered across the globe like glowing scars. Entire landscapes caved inward, revealing yawning black pits that seemed bottomless. And from those pits, something was climbing out. The first sightings were confused reports. Armored figures emerging from sinkholes, their bodies sheathed in blackened stone, their eyes glowing like molten gold. They moved with precision in ranks, as if answering a call older than nations. In Metropolis, Superman descended into the largest sinkhole at Centennial Park. Citizens screamed as the earth split, swallowing playgrounds and statues. From the depths a figure rose, 8 feet tall, encased in jagged obsidian armor. Its weapon dripped molten fire as it locked eyes with him. "Surface blood," it growled, its voice rumbling like an avalanche. "Your age of dominion ends. The Legion rises." Behind it, hundreds more followed, climbing like ants from a nest. Superman stood his ground, heat vision blazing, fists clenched. "Not while I'm here." The battle was instant. Heat vision seared through stone, fists shattered weapons, but more warriors poured from below. Each strike rattled the ground. And for the first time in years, Superman felt something he rarely did: resistance. These beings were not fragile criminals or reckless warlords. They were hardened by centuries beneath the earth, their strength amplified by molten energy coursing through their armor. The fight spilled deeper into the sinkhole itself. Superman pursued, only to feel his strength slipping. His solar cells, cut off from the sun's direct rays, weakened. Each punch was slower, each breath heavier. The Legion noticed. They pressed harder. For a moment, Superman faltered, pinned by 3 massive warriors driving him against jagged rock. The crowd above gasped as he staggered. But with a roar, he forced them back, bursting upward in a flare of heat vision that lit the sinkhole like a star. He emerged battered but victorious, only to see more sinkholes opening across the horizon. Dozens, hundreds. This was no invasion by chance. It was a war beginning. That night, the world's leaders convened. Emergency broadcasts flooded every channel. Cities from Paris to Karachi reported the same. Armored legions emerging from the earth, attacking infrastructure, toppling defenses. "They're coordinated," General Lane said in a Pentagon briefing. "This isn't random seismic activity. It's a military campaign." Superman stood among them, cape still torn, soot across his skin. "They call themselves the Buried Legion. They've been beneath us all this time. Waiting." The room went silent. Lois, reporting live, cut through the static with words that reached millions. "An ancient force has risen from beneath the soil. But tonight humanity does not stand alone. Superman is with us. And we must be with him." Her voice carried, igniting a fragile spark of unity in a terrified world. Days passed in chaos. The Legion carved their way upward in waves, each sinkhole birthing new armies. Skyscrapers fell. Entire neighborhoods disappeared into the earth. But for every tragedy, there were also acts of defiance. Firefighters holding lines against armored giants, miners using their knowledge of stone to collapse tunnels, civilians arming themselves with whatever they could find. Superman fought everywhere at once, or so it seemed. In Beijing, he intercepted a war band trying to breach the Forbidden City. In Rio, he caught a collapsing cable car before it fell into a chasm. In Nairobi, he shielded civilians from molten projectiles with his own body. But the deeper he fought, the weaker he became. Away from sunlight, he was no god. He was just a man with borrowed strength. And that terrified him. One evening, beneath the ruins of Istanbul's Grand Bazaar, Superman found himself cornered in a cavern lit by molten rivers. Dozens of Legion soldiers surrounded him, their weapons glowing. Their commander stepped forward, taller, broader, his armor fused with magma veins. "I am Arachik, he declared, his voice carrying like a quake. "Warlord of the buried Legion. We have slumbered in silence, bound by ancient wars. But now we rise to reclaim the surface that was stolen from us." Superman's jaw tightened. "The surface is not yours to take. It belongs to all who live here." Archiker's molten eyes narrowed. "Then it will be buried with you." The cavern erupted in violence. Archiker's hammer struck with the force of an avalanche, sending Superman sprawling. The battle raged, but even Superman's might faltered under the weight of darkness. Only when reinforcements, Turkish miners carrying floodlights and explosives, arrived did the tide shift. Together, they forced the Legion back into the depths, sealing the passage behind them. Superman rose, battered, looking at the soot-streaked miners who had risked everything to save him. They weren't gods. They weren't invincible. But they were unbreakable. And in their eyes, he saw something stronger than sunlight. He saw hope. That night, Lois wrote her headline. "Humanity's war has begun, and Superman cannot win it alone." Across the world, people read it. Soldiers, engineers, scientists, miners, farmers. It was a call not for fear, but for unity. Superman stood atop the Daily Planet building, gazing into the night sky where no stars could pierce the smoke. He knew the battles ahead would test him like never before. But he also knew this war would not be his alone. It would be humanity's. And together they might just endure. The war of fire and stone. The war spread like wildfire. From Los Angeles to London, from the frozen Arctic to the deserts of Africa, the buried Legion emerged. Sinkholes split highways, ancient tunnels erupted beneath stadiums, and entire neighborhoods vanished into the abyss. Humanity was under siege. Not from above but from below. And the terrifying truth was becoming clear. Superman could not be everywhere. In Metropolis, the Legion struck hard, their armored warriors pouring from the earth in relentless waves. Superman descended like a crimson comet, heat vision blazing, fists shattering weapons of molten steel. Yet for every warrior he felled, 3 more emerged from the shadows. He could feel it again. That weakness, that sluggishness. His strength dwindling beneath the heavy stone, far from the nourishing rays of the sun. His blows landed slower. His skin, once invulnerable, cracked beneath molten hammers. But he was not alone. Behind barricades, soldiers held the line with rifles and rocket fire. Firefighters redirected civilians to safety. Miners, armed with dynamite and knowledge of stone, collapsed side tunnels to choke off enemy advances. Engineers deployed prototypes. Artificial suns, massive lamps powered by nuclear cores, lowered into the tunnels like lighthouses in darkness. When the first sun ignited, the cavern blazed with golden light. The Legion stumbled, their armor sizzling, their molten weapons dimming. For the first time the battlefield shifted. Superman grinned through blood and dust. Humanity had found its weapon. The war was no longer one of survival. It was adaptation. In Cairo, engineers launched mirrored drones into the sky, directing beams of sunlight into newly opened chasms, forcing the Legion back into the dark. In Mexico City, miners turned subway tunnels into kill zones, luring warriors into explosive traps. In Sydney, civilian volunteers mounted floodlights onto trucks, chasing shadows like hunters driving beasts. Everywhere, people fought back with ingenuity, courage, and sheer defiance. Superman fought beside them, sometimes as the hammer that struck hardest, sometimes as the shield that protected the most vulnerable. But he began to see something profound. It wasn't his power turning the tide. It was theirs. Still, the Legion adapted. Commander Breathtaking marched across Europe, his war bands cutting deeper into the surface. In Berlin, his molten hammer shattered tanks with single blows. In Rome, he tore through centuries-old catacombs, bypassing human barricades. Everywhere he went, he left a message carved into stone. The surface will fall. The earth will reclaim its own. In a cavern beneath the ruins of Prague, Superman confronted him again. "You'll destroy the planet to rule it," Superman shouted, bracing against the warlord's hammer. Breathtaking's golden eyes burned. "We do not destroy. We restore. The surface was a theft, a wound upon the world. We are its blood, its memory. And you, alien, are nothing but a parasite feeding on its star." The hammer struck Superman squarely in the chest, hurling him into the rock. Blood filled his mouth. His body screamed with exhaustion. For the first time he wondered if he could win. But then, through the smoke, beams of light cut into the cavern. Human soldiers, carrying portable suns on their backs, advanced in formation. They planted the reactors into the stone and activated them. Blinding light filled the chamber. The Legion shrieked, retreating into cracks and fissures. Breathtaking shielded himself with his hammer, snarling, "You fight with false stars. But false light cannot last forever." Superman rose, his cape torn, and met the warlord's glare. Sometimes a spark is all it takes to burn back the dark. The battle dragged on for weeks, each side evolving. The Legion unleashed horrors from the deep, beasts forged of obsidian and magma, their bodies chained and driven into battle like living siege engines. In Sao Paulo, one such creature burst through the earth, its body taller than skyscrapers, its roar shaking the foundations of the city. Superman fought it tooth and nail, wrestling it through avenues, dragging it toward an artificial sun. With the help of Brazilian engineers who detonated charges beneath its molten legs, the beast toppled, collapsing into rubble. But victories came with costs. Cities lay in ruins. Thousands died. Every triumph was bought with sacrifice. And yet, the world was no longer afraid. Lois Lane's broadcasts carried across continents. From makeshift studios in bunkers, she spoke not of despair, but of defiance. In every city, in every town, the buried Legion thinks they've met prey. But what they've met is humanity. Farmers are becoming fighters. Engineers are inventing weapons in days that should take decades. Children are growing up not in fear, but in fire. And standing with us is Superman, not as a savior above us, but as a brother among us. This is not their world to take. It is ours to share. And we will fight for it. Her words became a battle cry. In the heart of Africa, beneath the Rift Valley, humanity staged its first counteroffensive. Superman led the charge, alongside soldiers, miners, and civilians armed with lamps and explosives. They descended into the earth, not waiting for the Legion to emerge but striking first. The cavern stretched for miles, lit only by molten rivers. The air was suffocating, the heat unbearable. But the humans pressed on, their lamps cutting paths through the dark. The Legion met them with fury. Blades clashed, molten weapons hissed, and the cavern echoed with screams. Superman fought at the front, every strike shaking the earth, but for every enemy he felled, he looked back and saw humanity standing with him. Ordinary people fighting like legends. At the climax of the battle, the Grand Reactor, a massive artificial sun built by a coalition of nations, was rolled into the cavern. Engineers activated it, and with a blinding flash it ignited. The cavern filled with golden brilliance. The Legion staggered, their molten veins dimming. Entire battalions collapsed under the weight of the light. And for the first time, the buried legion retreated. But victory came with a price. The grand reactor overloaded, its core collapsing in a fiery implosion. Hundreds of soldiers and engineers perished holding the line long enough for civilians to escape. Superman tried to save them all, but even he couldn't. The weight of their sacrifice pressed heavily on his soul. When the survivors emerged, battered but alive, the world erupted in cheers. Humanity had struck the Legion. They had shown the world they could fight back. But in the depths, Arichikar stood among his wounded warriors, his hammer still burning. "Surface vermin," he growled. "You fight with light, but the dark is endless. You cannot hold it back forever." He raised his hammer high, rallying what remained of his armies. "Let them burn their sons. We will drown them in shadow." Above, Superman stood on a ridge, overlooking the rift. His cape fluttered in the hot wind, his body weary but unbroken. He whispered to Lois, who stood beside him with her recorder. "This isn't just my fight anymore. Never was. Humanity isn't waiting for me to save them. They're saving themselves. I've never been prouder to stand with them." Lois pressed record, her voice carrying across the radio waves. "This is not the end. This is the beginning of humanity's stand. The war is far from over, but we are no longer victims. We are fighters. We are united. And together with Superman we will reclaim our world." The world listened, and for the first time since the earth began to tremble, it believed. Shadows of sacrifice. The war had become a rhythm of fire and darkness. One city would rise in defiance, its streets lit by artificial suns and its people armed with ingenuity. Another would fall into shadow, swallowed by sinkholes and left in ruin. Humanity was learning to fight, but the Legion's strength seemed endless, their warriors pouring from the earth like an unstoppable tide. And in the midst of it all, Superman began to understand. Victory would not come without sacrifice. In Metropolis, the front lines cut deep into the earth. Engineers worked around the clock, carving out bunkers, reinforcing tunnels, and planting reactors that burned with golden light. Soldiers patrolled with portable suns on their backs, their armor painted with solar symbols like shields of faith. But the deeper they pushed, the more monstrous the enemy became. The Legion unleashed their true horrors, beasts forged from stone and fire. Some were serpentine, slithering through cracks with jaws of molten teeth. Others lumbered like giants, their skin plated with obsidian, their veins glowing with magma. Entire platoons were crushed under their weight. Superman fought them with every ounce of strength, grappling titans, shattering serpents, and dragging them into the light. But each battle took its toll. His body was bruised, his cape torn, his breath ragged. The earth's depths sapped him, draining his power. And yet, every time he faltered, a hand was there to lift him. A soldier shielding him with his last burst of rifle fire. A miner detonating charges to collapse a tunnel above his head. An engineer dragging a dying son closer so he could regain his strength. It was no longer Superman saving humanity. It was humanity saving Superman. Lois Lane's broadcasts carried this truth to the world. She spoke not of Superman as a god, but as a comrade in arms. She told stories of soldiers who held the line until their last breath, of mothers who armed themselves to defend their children, of miners who sealed themselves inside collapsing tunnels so others could escape. "The Legion believes they are eternal," Lois said into the microphone, her voice steady despite the distant rumble of explosions. "But what they do not understand is sacrifice. Humanity has always endured, not because of strength, but because of the willingness to give everything for each other. Superman does not fight alone. None of us do." Her words lit a fire stronger than any reactor. Deep beneath the Alps, Superman and a coalition of international forces launched an offensive to destroy a Legion fortress carved into a cavern the size of a city. The approach was brutal. Legions of armored warriors poured from every crevice. The fortress itself was a nightmare of black stone, its walls etched with glowing runes, its towers spitting molten fire. Human engineers set charges along the cavern floor, detonating them in synchronized bursts. The ground shook, collapsing entire Legion formations. Artificial suns blazed on the ridges, cutting swaths of light through the dark. Superman soared into the thick of it, fists breaking shields, heat vision slicing through waves of enemies. Yet for every warrior he felled, a dozen more advanced. Then came the Obsidian Colossus, a beast larger than any he had ever faced. Its body was a mountain of jagged rock, its eyes glowing pits of fire. It swung its arms like falling towers, crushing soldiers beneath them. Superman attacked, but even he struggled. His punches cracked stone but did not shatter it. The Colossus roared, slamming him into the ground with earth-shaking force. It was then that Captain Rodriguez, a veteran miner from Chile, made a choice. "Detonate the lower charges," he shouted into his radio. "But you're still down there," an engineer cried. Rodriguez smiled grimly. "So is that monster." The charges blew, collapsing the cavern floor beneath the Colossus. The beast plummeted into a chasm of molten rock, dragging Rodriguez and his squad with it. Superman tried to save them, but he was too late. He caught only echoes of their final screams before the abyss consumed them. When the fortress finally fell, it was not triumph that filled Superman's heart, but sorrow. That night, in the glow of a battered reactor, Superman sat in silence. His hands shook. His cape was in tatters. The blood of friend and foe alike stained his skin. Lois approached him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You can't save everyone, Clark," she whispered. The final underground war. The world held its breath. For months, humanity had fought in shadows, building suns where none belonged, bleeding in tunnels never meant for human feet. Now, at last, the war had reached its climax. Deep beneath the crust, where molten rivers roared and stone groaned under eternal pressure, lay the throne of stone, the heart of the buried Legion. A fortress vast as a mountain, carved from obsidian, its towers burned with crimson fire. From here Arachika ruled, and from here he planned to collapse the surface once and for all. Superman stood at the vanguard, flanked not by gods, not by kings, but by humanity's finest. Soldiers with rifles and suns strapped to their backs. Miners with explosives and knowledge of stone. Engineers with reactor cores on rolling carriers. Civilians who had refused to run, carrying whatever weapons they could muster. They were not an army born of tradition. They were an army born of necessity. And together they marched into hell. The first clash shook the world. From the fortress poured the Legion. Thousands of armored warriors, their molten weapons blazing. At their head strode the Dread Forged, the elite of the elite, their armor alive with pulsing veins of magma. Superman flew forward, crashing into their ranks like a living spear of hope. His fists shattered shields. His heat vision sliced through molten blades, but even as he struck, the humans advanced behind him. Portable suns flared to life, golden light cutting through the cavern like dawn. The Legion recoiled, their strength faltering. Soldiers pressed the attack, rifles spitting fire. Miners detonated charges, collapsing towers of stone upon advancing hordes. Engineers rolled forward the reactors, igniting them one by one until the cavern burned with artificial day. It was not just Superman's strength. It was humanity's will. But the Legion was endless. For every line broken, another emerged. Beasts of obsidian thundered through the battlefield. Winged terrors, born of lava and shadow, swooped down from the cavern ceiling. The ground itself split open, swallowing men and machines whole. Superman fought with fury, but exhaustion gnawed at him. Each blow felt heavier, each breath shallower. He was far from the sun, far from the source of his strength. His body bled, his skin bruised. His cape was nothing but tatters. And still he fought on. Beside him, humans held the line. A squad of Japanese engineers dragged a failing reactor into place, holding back the Legion with flamethrowers until the sun burst to life. African miners detonated charges beneath a charging beast, bringing it down in a storm of fire. A squadron of American soldiers linked their shields around Superman, protecting him as he staggered to his feet. Everywhere he looked, he saw sacrifice. Everywhere he looked, he saw courage. At the heart of the battlefield, the gates of the throne of stone opened. Breathtaking emerged. He was colossal, his body plated in obsidian, his hammer glowing with molten fury. His eyes burned like suns, but they were not warm, they were cruel. "Alien," he roared, his voice echoing across the cavern. "Your borrowed strength ends here. The surface is mine. The light is mine. Humanity will burn, and you will kneel in the ashes." Superman rose into the air. His body battered but his spirit unbroken. Humanity doesn't kneel. Not to you. Not to anyone. The duel began. Hammer met fist, stone met steel. The ground quaked with every blow. Superman struck with heat vision, but Breathtaking's hammer absorbed it, hurling the energy back. The warlord's strength was immense, forged by centuries beneath crushing stone. Every strike threatened to break Superman's bones. Yet Superman did not falter. He remembered Lois's words. He remembered the miners who gave their lives. He remembered the soldiers, the engineers, the civilians standing with him. He was not fighting alone. All around them the battle raged. The Legion pressed harder, driving humanity back step by step. Suns flickered and died. Explosives ran dry. Ammunition dwindled. For every human who fell, another took their place. But the line was breaking. Then came the order. Ignite the grand reactor. Engineers rushed to the heart of the battlefield, dragging forward the largest artificial sun ever built. Its casing cracked from the strain, its core unstable, but it was their last chance. If it ignited, the cavern would blaze brighter than day. If it failed, all would be lost. As they struggled, the Legion surged toward them. Superman saw it. He knew what was at stake. But Breathtaking held him fast, hammer pressing against his chest, bones straining under the weight. "You cannot win," Breathtaking snarled. Superman clenched his fists, blood running down his face, and whispered through gritted teeth. "I'm not trying to win. We are." With a final burst of strength, he broke free, grabbing the hammer and hurling Breathtaking backward. He flew to the engineers, shielding them with his own body as they completed the activation. The grand reactor ignited. Light unlike anything seen before flooded the cavern. The Legion shrieked, their armor cracking, their molten weapons extinguishing. The beasts crumbled to ash. Even Breathtaking staggered, his hammer dimming, his obsidian armor fracturing. "No," he growled, his voice breaking. "Darkness is eternal." Superman stood over him, fists clenched, light burning against his torn body. "So is hope." With one final strike, he drove Breathtaking into the stone. The warlord shattered, his body consumed by the light. The throne of stone cracked, then crumbled. The fortress collapsed, tunnels caving in, rivers of molten rock consuming what remained of the Legion. The war was over. Silence fell. In the glow of the dying sun, survivors looked around in awe. The Legion was gone. The fortress had fallen. Against all odds, humanity had stood its ground. Superman collapsed to his knees, his body broken but his spirit blazing. Soldiers rushed to him, helping him rise. He looked at them, not as savior to saved, but as brother to brother. "You did this," he whispered. "All of you. Humanity won this war." Days later, the world emerged from the shadow. Monuments rose across nations, not to Superman alone, but to the miners, the engineers, the soldiers, the civilians who had given everything. Their names were etched into stone, their stories told in every home. Lois's final broadcast echoed across the globe. "We faced an army older than our civilizations. We faced a darkness that believed itself eternal. But we stood together. Superman was our shield, but it was humanity's spirit that was our sword." The buried legion is gone, but the lesson remains. We are stronger than the shadows. We are stronger together. And in the skies above, Superman soared once more, not as a savior, not as a god, but as a companion in humanity's endless journey. From soil to stars, humanity had stood. And it had won.